Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Birds Nest Podcast. I'm Joe Donahue. Thank you so much for joining us. The Philadelphia Eagles return home this week to take on the Las Vegas Raiders. And this was a game that, coming into the season, probably could have qualified as a trap game just because I think we all expected how bad the Raiders were going to be. And I think we all knew how well we thought the Eagles were going to be doing at this point in the season. And given the caliber of opponents that the Eagles had faced up to this point since the bye, we all probably would have expected that, hey, the Eagles are riding high. This could have been a trap game. But at this point, I'm actually regarding this game as probably a litmus test of the entire season, more so than last week against the LA Chargers. Can the 8-5 Philadelphia Eagles find it in them to defeat the 2-11 Las Vegas Raiders when they come into town on Sunday? Well, that's the big question. And for a while, as I mentioned, this game probably would have been a sure thing, too. The Birds still projected to coast very easily ahead of the Raiders. And to be fair to this team, the New York Times still gives the Philadelphia Eagles a 92% chance to make the playoffs going into this week's games. But that number would drop to 79% if the Birds lose on Sunday afternoon. And there's no question that the Eagles are markedly worse after the bye this year. While it is definitely the job of the Eagles fan base to hope, sometimes hope against hope, for things to get better, the reality is it's going to take a lot of effort and some really serious soul searching by this team in order for that to occur. But that said, this game does remain very winnable for the Philadelphia Eagles if they can find even a modicum of better performance than we've been seeing over the last few weeks. So let's talk about what it will take for this Philadelphia Eagles team to win. And for the offense, it's really got to be a back to basics kind of game. Now, to be fair, I'm not on site at NovaCare every day, so I don't know exactly from firsthand experience what goes on during practice. I can only judge the results that come out on Sunday. And at this point in the season, I'm not seeing the evidence that the offense seems to be preparing for or game planning for opponents or specific situations that might arise. I'm not seeing that. We can look at the defense for an example of how this is done well. The Eagles had to play on Sunday without Jalen Carter, and the Eagles were still able to come away with 7 sacks. Jalen Carter has 2 sacks and 11 quarterback hits through these first 14 weeks of the season. So the fact that the Eagles were able to amass those kinds of statistics without Jalen Carter on the field is incredible. You could not have asked for more from the defensive scheme because NFL offenses in today's day and age absolutely should be able to score more than 22 points when they have the talent that the Philadelphia Eagles offense has. So when it fails, very often it's on the players initially, and definitely there's a lot of critiquing of players in specific situations that could occur. But as Nick is wont to say when asked about his relationship with Jalen this week, it's the coach's job to correct the things that need correcting.
Yeah, we know each other well enough that, we're always just doing everything we can do to get better. Won't get too much into that. But, always, like I said earlier, you always praise the things that they do well, and you correct the things that you want them to improve. That's our job as coaches. The tone or the energy or whatever you do, I won't get too much into that, but, everybody, you may not coach everything exactly the same as far as demeanor or, so there's a time to yell, there's a time to bring up, but it's always goes back to, and this is, I think there's an art to this. It always goes back to the standard. Did you meet the standard? Did you not meet the standard? And then there's an art to, how you correct it in the sense of that. But it's always goes back to the standard. Did you meet it? Great. Did you not? And you're going to praise that. And did you not? Then you correct it.
And again, if it were just Jalen that needed correcting, I'd be more willing to harp on him directly and him not being able to accept whatever feedback or critiques or coaching that Nick Sirianni, Kevin Patullo, and others are trying to offer him. But it is not just Jalen. The offensive line has not been clicking all season. The receivers have been running the most predictable routes, and they haven't been able to break open from defenders in the secondary. These are more systematic issues, more schematic issues that are typified by bad coaching. And the Eagles are abandoning things that are working well for them. The run game is shunned very quickly, reminiscent of the Andy Reid era. We had the fake tush push that led to the Saquon Barkley touchdown on Sunday, and we never saw anything as inspired since. We saw the Eagles move away from a run game that was working well against a team in the LA Chargers that had the run game as probably one of the few weak points that they had. The Eagles find a play that works and then they never do it again, and they seem to be doing the opposite of what is working. That's a systematic issue and it's a coaching problem. Also, on the systematic level, is the Eagles' declined use of misdirection. I saw this interesting stat recently, and though it's from October, I don't imagine the numbers have changed substantially in one way or the other. When Jalen is under the gun, the Philadelphia Eagles pass about 70% of the time. When Jalen is under center, they run more than 80% of the time. The most common types of offensive misdirection are going to be those things that will be play action, there'll be RPOs, there'll be the zone reads in the run game. You can't effectively use those if Jalen Hurts is tipping his pitches every single time. If you only have to look at the Eagles lining up Jalen in a particular spot to determine what kind of play is coming next, I could pull about 5 people off of the street and they could design a defensive scheme that would shut down the Philadelphia Eagles offense. So if the Eagles want to put the offense one step ahead of the defense, as it should be, because the offense should always be one step ahead of the defense, because the offense knows what's coming and the defense in theory doesn't, the Eagles will have to utilize the misdirection that they've been putting forward last season. Put Jalen under center and have him throw a pass or fake it to Saquon or do anything that would cause a defense to think for even a half a second longer than they should have. Because if they can hesitate for even another moment, that provides an opportunity for a receiver to get open, or that provides an opportunity for Saquon to find the hole, or that provides an opportunity for Jalen to say, you know what, there's a lane, I'm taking off. The Raiders are 24th in the league in sacks per pass attempt at 6.34%. And our offensive line should be able to handle them no matter where Jalen Hurts lines up. Put Jalen under center a few times and make them think. Now, these are problems that should have been addressed during one of the many long breaks that the Eagles have had over the season, from weeks 1 to 2, from week 6 to 7, during the week 9 bye, and most recently between weeks 13 and 14 when the Eagles had the mini bye ahead of the Chargers. But what we're seeing is that these course corrections are not happening. And we're seeing the same unimagined, uninspired offensive scheme that I really think is going to be the downfall of this team going forward. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles also have to fix the issues that are causing them to play from behind the sticks. The Eagles have seemingly seldom had a first down play that results in positive yards, especially if it's more than a yard or two. It makes a difference if you're playing 2nd and 5 versus 2nd and 15, and the Eagles have to get their heads in the game there. Again, this seems more schematic than anything else, but especially in the offensive line situation, the Eagles hopefully should be able to rectify that. Defensively, the Philadelphia Eagles need to build upon the success of last week. So, after just a couple of weeks where the Eagles struggled justifiably on defense with their performance, given how many times the defense has been called upon to cover for the offense, I'm kind of not concerned about that, especially given how much the defense was able to turn things around. I mentioned the stat earlier, 7 sacks against Justin Herbert, and that was without Jalen Carter, who's been a monster on the line of scrimmage. But the Birds absolutely have to keep that success going. My only real concern with the defense, besides occasional sort of one off things, is the fact that the Eagles seem to be getting consistently worse on third downs. The Eagles are 24th in the league on third down conversions, allowing opponents a 41.9% conversion rate on third downs. And most of that is in late game situations occurring after the second half. I would really like to see the percentage going down and the Eagles defense playing a solid 4 quarters where they can get off the field on third downs. It'll be much better for them in the long run. The other thing that I do want to talk about is takeaways, and the Raiders are definitely not a good team when it comes to takeaways. The Raiders have a 3.41% interception rate on offense, which is actually 30th in the league. So the Raiders offense is turning the ball over quite a bit. The Raiders have already thrown 14 interceptions on the season, and that's as many takeaways as they have on the other side of the football. So the Raiders are actually -3 in the turnover differential when you take a look at the entire season, but the interception rate is 30th in the league, and that's not a good look for the Raiders, and that should present a strong opportunity for the Philadelphia Eagles when it comes to their defense and being able to generate the kinds of turnovers. The turnover stat is probably one of the most telling stats in the National Football League when it comes to who won the game. If you don't tell me the score, one of the first things that I would probably look to is who had more turnovers than the other team. And if that's the situation, then yeah, I would be very willing to bet that the team with the most turnovers in the game probably won. And in the same way that the Philadelphia Eagles have to capitalize on the opportunity that the Raiders are going to give them in terms of how many opportunities for interceptions, the Philadelphia Eagles also have to rectify whatever it was that occurred that caused Jalen Hurts to throw his interceptions. One of them for sure wasn't his fault on Sunday. That was absolutely A.J. Brown's, but the other three were bad decisions. So if it's more time on film, if it's more time on field, if it's more time anywhere else, the Philadelphia Eagles have to make those kinds of course corrections. Jalen has to be able to figure out how to process the information quickly so that way he can find the right guy and not put the ball in danger. Now, I will point out that the Philadelphia Eagles had a short week this week, and they did have a estimated injury report come out on Wednesday because the Eagles only did a walkthrough. They did not do a full practice. And that estimated report had Jalen Carter and Lane Johnson both as non participants in that simulated practice. So hopefully that is not a harbinger of bad news for this team. We'll obviously see what comes of the injury reports on Thursday and Friday. We do not have those yet at the time of this recording, but we will see what happens. But as always, let me know what you think in the comments below. What are your thoughts heading into this game? What concerns do you have? What areas do you think that the Eagles should be able to capitalize on? Let me know. And thank you so much to everyone for tuning into the Bird's Nest podcast. You can support the Bird's Nest podcast by liking and subscribing to Bird's Nest Media right here on YouTube, as well as by sharing to your social media pages. You can also find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, and iHeartRadio. Please visit birdsnestmedia.com for additional Eagles and NFL coverage. And if you feel so inclined to support us in a different way, you can find the link to our Patreon in the description below or at birdsnestmedia.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's go Eagles.